do you have a reaction to Russia's Palm Sunday attack on Ukraine?
I think it was terrible, and I was told they made a mistake, but I think it's a horrible thing. I think the whole war is a horrible thing. I think the war is, for that war to have started, is an abuse of power. This country would have never allowed that war to have started if I were president. That war is a shame. Millions of people are dead that should be alive. Cities are being destroyed all over Ukraine. The whole culture is gone. We're certainly very severely hurt. You know, the chapels, the churches, the spirals, all of the things that they had in Ukraine were among the most beautiful anywhere in the world. Most of them are knocked down and blown up into a million pieces. But most importantly, you have millions of people dead that shouldn't be dead. Think of it. Think of what a rigged election means. We would have had we wouldn't have had the war in Ukraine. We wouldn't have had the Russia-Ukraine situation. We wouldn't have had October 7th, Israel, the Middle East. We wouldn't have had inflation. We wouldn't have had the most embarrassing day or period in the history of our country. That's Afghanistan. One of the most embarrassing moments in the history of our country, Afghanistan. All of these things wouldn't have taken place. Think of it. We wouldn't have had inflation. But millions of people would be alive, except for the fact that the election were rigged, because that war would have never started, and Putin never would have started that war. Okay, any other questions?
When you say they made a mistake in the attack, you said they made you were told they made a mistake. Do you mean it was unintentional?
They made a mistake. I believe it was. Look, you're going to ask them. This is Biden's war. This is not my war. I've been here for a very short period of time. This is a war that was under Biden. He gave him billions and billions of dollars. He should have never allowed, if he had any brain, which he didn't have and doesn't have, and now it's being proven, he wouldn't have allowed that war to start. I would have absolutely not. That war would never have taken place. But remember this is Biden's war. I'm just trying to get it stopped so that we can save a lot of lives. They happen to be Ukrainian and Russian lives. But all I want to do is get it stopped.
If you had any trouble making sense of that absolute word salad that came out of the president's mouth last night aboard Air Force One, don't worry, because you're not alone. But also don't worry, because I'm here to go through the totally erroneous statements that Donald Trump just made in that video clip there. But before we do that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below, and share with someone who's into politics. It helps out the YouTube algorithm a lot. So let's head over here to Mediaite, where we have a text readout here of that clip that you guys just watched. And boy, oh boy, do we have some things to clarify here. Donald Trump was asked point blank whether or not the attack on Palm Sunday that Russia carried out against Ukraine was a mistake. And he said that it was a mistake, but also didn't seem like Putin did it unintentionally, which is very, very confusing. And the president continues to be a very unclear, confusing messenger when it comes to this conflict, something that the American people deserve a better commander-in-chief to do. So the reporter asks, do you have a reaction to Russia's Palm Sunday attack? Trump says, I think it was a terrible thing. I was told that they made a mistake, but I think it's a horrible thing. I think the whole war is a horrible thing. I think that war is, for that war to have started, is an abuse of power. This country would have never allowed that war to have starting if I were president. That war is a sham. Millions of people are dead that should be alive. Cities are being destroyed all over Ukraine. The whole culture is gone or very severely hurt. So again, Trump repeatedly said throughout his campaign that if he were to be reelected, that the Ukraine-Russian conflict would be over in 24 hours, and has continually attempted to shift blame to Biden for this conflict being started in the first place, when it was in fact Biden's administration and Antony Blinken who correctly warned the Ukrainians months before the invasion began that an invasion was imminent. And we in fact told that to Zelensky time and time again. Hey, we see that Ukraine is going to be attacked. get ready. And they kind of didn't want to believe it, either through wishful thinking, or they actually didn't think Russia was going to attack in a wide scale way Ukraine. But they did. Biden predicted it, and we saw it was the writing on the wall, and gave Ukraine a leg up in defending themselves based on the information that we gave them that an attack was imminent. So Biden foresaw this conflict occurring because of a lack of action by the world and by the United States in times prior to February of 2022 that allowed for Putin to be able to invade in a wide scale way. So, enough with this idea that the war wouldn't have started if Trump was president. I think that that's absolutely nonsense. I think that the war would have probably started even sooner, and the war would certainly be going much more favorably to Russia if Trump was president when Russia decided to invade. I think it's very likely that what Trump's talking about when he says the war wouldn't have started, what he's saying is that we wouldn't have given any support to Ukraine whatsoever, and Ukraine would have been crushed immediately because we wouldn't have supported them with military assistance if Trump was president. So he repeatedly calls, the war an abuse of power, and he says that it's a sham and the culture has been destroyed and all this stuff. But again, he hasn't done anything to bring this conflict to a resolution. And what he's done is he has carried water for Putin by perpetrating his talking points to millions and millions of people here in the United States that believe every single thing that comes out of Trump's mouth, and then in turn don't support the Ukrainians based on what Trump is saying. So let's continue down here through this statement. But most importantly, you have millions of people dead. That shouldn't be dead. Think of it. Think of what a rigged election means. We wouldn't have had the war in Ukraine. We wouldn't have had the Russian-Ukraine situation. We wouldn't have had October 7th, Israel, the Middle East. We wouldn't have had inflation. We wouldn't have had the most embarrassing day or a period in the history of our country. That's Afghanistan, one of the most embarrassing moments in the history of a country, Afghanistan. Okay, so a few things here. Again, the Ukrainian-Russian conflict has had things contributing to it way outside any one particular White House. But again, Donald Trump campaigned time and time again. He posted on Truth Social time and time again, the war would be over in 24 hours if I'm elected. So, are we to believe him that the war wouldn't have started in the first place if he were president, when he continually says that the war would be over in 24 hours if he were to be elected? But he's been president for months and months now, and the conflict is just continuing to escalate, as we saw with this awful attack that Russia carried out on Sunday, killing 34 people. When Trump seems to believe that Putin wants to have a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Just last week, Marco Rubio was saying, we're going to find out if Russia actually wants peace. Well, I think that launching a missile attack, killing 34 people, should give you an indication on where Russia's at in their interest in pursuing peace talks and actually coming to a peaceful resolution. I don't think that you can have a peaceful resolution or peace talks when you are simultaneously launching missiles, killing dozens and dozens of people. On October 7th, that's just, what does Trump believe that would have gone differently if he were president? I'm not sure there. And then on Afghanistan, he calls Afghanistan the worst day in the history of the United States of America. Well, I would say that the day invading Afghanistan was significantly worse than the day that we finally had the gall to withdraw our military operations from Afghanistan. And Biden was, in fact, the president who had the courage, he had the conviction to deliver on his word when the previous 3 presidents before him could not deliver on their promise to withdraw all troops from Iraq and from Afghanistan. Bush promised that. He failed. Obama promised that. He failed. Trump campaigned on that and promised that in 2016. He failed. Biden campaigned on that and promised that, and he delivered. And it was never going to be pretty getting all of our troops out of Afghanistan. And in fact, if Trump was a much stronger negotiator, then he would have not fallen back on the Doha agreements and basically entered the Doha agreements, which was a very, very weak negotiating position for the United States to be in with the Taliban, and ultimately led to the disastrous withdrawal that we ultimately saw. But it was not just the fault of Biden, right? Biden was the one who had to deal with all the political blowback of withdrawing from Afghanistan, again, because he is actually a man who believes what he says and does the right thing, even when the right thing is not the most popular thing, and even when the right thing is going to make you look bad as a leader, you still do it knowing that it, in your heart of hearts, it is the right thing to do. And that's what Biden did in Afghanistan. Continuing down this statement, I guess you can say, that Trump made, he says millions of people would be alive if the war never started. If he was still president, millions and millions would be alive. Okay, dude, well, you keep saying over and over and over again that the war would be over if you were president again. So you're president now. So these millions and millions of lives that you keep saying that you so much don't want to be lost in the conflict, well, end the conflict like you said you would be able to do and convinced people you would be able to do time and time again. So he says, okay, any other questions? Reporter, when you say that they made a mistake in the attack, you were told they made a mistake. Do you mean it was unintentional? President Trump, they made a mistake. I believe it was, look, you're going to ask them. This is Biden's war. So when asked to clarify exactly what he means, did they make a mistake? Was it an unintentional attack? Were they intending to attack a different target? Trump again gives a very confusing answer in it was, I believe it was a mistake. I believe it was, and then he goes on to blame Biden. I believe it was a mistake. I believe it was Biden's fault. Dude, just last week, your Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was saying, we're going to see if Russia is actually for realsies when they decide, when they're talking about wanting to come to the table and enter negotiations with Zelensky. But a week later, we have a Russian missile attack killing 34 people in Ukraine. And the president of the United States is saying he thinks it was a mistake that this attack happened, but not clarifying whether or not it was intentional, while blaming the previous president for a conflict that Trump has said that he would have ended already. I mean, what a feckless loser of a leader. What a feckless, confused person we have messaging to millions and millions of people here in the United States the parameters of one of the most consequential global conflicts in the 21st century, if not the most consequential. Very, very illuminating example here of Trump's complete inability to deliver a clear message on, again, one of the most consequential conflicts in the 21st century. He is unable to do so. And really, we have a president of the United States who is unfit to lead. He's unfit to deliver messaging about different things going on in the world clearly and factually and truthfully. And he's somebody who is really just unfit to be elected and should be impeached for quite a number of different reasons that you could find to impeach Donald Trump at this point. But his total unwillingness to stand up for Ukraine in the face of aggression from a larger country, something that, being a member of NATO, that the United States should be totally against, Just another clear example of how unfit Donald Trump is to be the president of the United States. That's all I got for you guys in this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. Let me know what you think about this story. Take care.